the challenge that we have. So let's go to a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment with some more. The McIntyre Report, as I said, we were talking about before, why don't we hear about the billionaire elites, the Western elites, the most powerful families in the West every day? Why don't they talk about the Rothschilds and Rockefellers? It's almost like it's silence. You're never going to hear that on mainstream media. When's the last time on Channel 7, 9, 10, ABC, or in Murdoch papers have you heard the name Rothschilds or Rockefellers mentioned? Almost never. It's almost like we're meant to pretend they don't exist. It's almost like we're meant to pretend they're poor and have no ability through the massive wealth, combined net worth, you can check this out, of over $1 trillion. I don't know about you, but if you had $1 billion, I dare say you think you could influence a lot of things, let alone $1 trillion. So, of course, it's absurd and it's delusional just to go, they're just a conspiracy theory. There's no way they have control. But we do know they do actually talk about them every day, just not directly. They do talk about the Fed, the Federal Reserve, which, by the way, is a non-government organization. It was railroaded through the Congress in 1913. It was a takeover of the U.S. government's monetary system. See, governments have the ability to print money, but they don't. Because where Rothschilds wanted to keep the monopoly over the issuance of money, they just create money out of thin air. And then they lend it to our governments. And then our governments tax. Who do you think invented income tax? The Rothschilds. Why? Because they're going to loan money to your governments, and the government's going to have to pay interest back to them. They're skimming the system. And then to make sure they can pay those debts back to government, they create income tax and many other forms of tax, and they tax you. So indirectly, they put their hand in your till. Why are you paying so much tax in Australia? Rothschilds. In America, Rothschilds. Why do you have to now have both couples working? Rothschilds. Why is there so many broken families? Rothschilds. Why was there World War I? Rothschilds. Why was there World War II? Rothschilds. Why is there a war in Ukraine and Russia right now? Rothschilds. How come it's never mentioned? Because the Rothschilds own the Western media. And of course, they're not going to allow themselves to be disclosed as the enemy, because all of us would stop fighting with each other and turn our attention to who is the real enemy. Now, of course, they'll just say it's a conspiracy theory. The people that are running the conspiracy will tell you it's a conspiracy theory because they don't want you to find out the truth. The conspiracy theory was that COVID was a global pandemic, like the Spanish flu going to kill you. That was a conspiracy theory, not based in fact, complete and utter theory. The conspiracy theory is that if we don't urgently reduce our economies to net zero and ban gasoline cars and shut down coal-fired power stations and never use nuclear, then the world's going to collapse. It's a theory. The world will collapse to Western civilization by them doing this deliberately. See, the Rothschilds deliberately creating food shortages right now. They're deliberately creating an energy shortage. Don't just listen to me. Let's check out this RAND report. Now, the RAND Corporation works closely with the CIA, NSA, the White House, Democrats, etc., U.S. State Department. But see, what they've done in World War II, the Rothschilds had, in World War I, they killed the Tsars, Russian Tsars, and introduced communism. Communism exists in the world today because of the Rothschilds, the Bolshevik Revolution. They killed the Tsar family and introduced, made Russia, the Soviet Union, communism. Russians were never communist. They also then created a scene for the rise of Hitler in Germany. See, their strategy has been to divide to conquer. They can never have a united Europe. A united Europe would isolate their power. If they can keep Europe divided, keep Russia at war with Germany and Germany at war with England, then behind the scenes by them controlling intelligence agents in the US military with the infiltration of the US, they could then keep the world divided, keep the world not focused on them, and they could manage to control the majority of the world. To make sense and instill their Rothschilds banking system, the Federal Reserve central banking system around the world. And any countries that don't have it, they could target and say they're the enemy, such as Iran, Iraq in the past, Libya, Yemen, etc. Afghanistan. Enemies of the world. Why? Because they've refused the Rothschild's banking system. So, did you know Winston Churchill was a stooge for the Rothschilds? They control the media, made out Winston Churchill was a war hero. He was a war criminal, just like George Bush Jr. and Sr. They controlled and manipulated the Nazis to do a lot of killings, and they controlled and manipulated, just like they're doing in Ukraine, had the Nazis involved to slaughter people. They infiltrated Germany and caused a lot of slaughtering on both sides. See, Germany didn't want to enter the war, but they had their stooge in Churchill, got rid of Chamberlain, and then bombed German cities. And Hitler tried to appease them and say, we don't want war with England. We're happy for England to be a powerful empire. We don't want war. Eventually, though, they knew the Rothschilds that can manipulate and get England to continue to bombing German cities and just killing mass civilians, that Germany would have no choice but to eventually fight back. Just like you see today in Ukraine. They say an unprovoked, the Rothschilds media tells you, lies to you and your family and fellow Australians and people in the West, that Russia had an unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. It's not unprovoked, and it's not even an invasion. In the Putin's words, which is accurate, that they're there to stop the war. The war was started 8 years ago with some of the Rothschilds' front puppets and George Soros, a legal armed coup, overthrowing a democratic elected president in 2014. You go check all that out. Many of you will be aware of that now. And started the war and started building up Ukrainian military to be one of the most powerful ones to threaten Russia and to make Ukraine become part of NATO. Why would the Soviet Union ever allow Ukraine to become independent if it was going to join NATO and become a threat to Russia? It was never been allowed, or Eastern Europe. Designed that way. It was deliberately provoked, and 150,000 troops amassed on the Donbass to attack and kill ethnic Russians that live in Eastern Ukraine. Russia had no choice. That's how they knew Russia was going to enter Ukraine. They had a moral obligation to protect Russians living there and to protect the Eastern Ukrainians that were being slaughtered. Russia didn't want war, just like Hitler didn't want war. It was the Rothschilds manipulating events to create World War II. It's the manipulating events to create Ukraine-Russia war and trying to create World War III. By destroying, German economy is about to collapse because Germany's economy is based on cheap gas from Russia. And the Western foreign policy, the elites, the Rothschilds, have stopped that. They're destroying Germany. Why? Because they want to destroy Germany. Don't take my word for it. This is from the Rand report, January, sent to the White House, the Democratic Party, CIA, NSA, etc., the U.S. State Department. A controlled crisis. Due to the coalition constraints, the German leadership is not in full control of the situation in the country. Thanks to our precise action, it has been possible to block the commissioning of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, that's from Russia to Germany to Europe, to pipe cheap gas. Despite the opposition to lobbyists from the steel and chemical industry, however, the dramatic deterioration of living standards may encourage the leadership to reconsider its policies and return to the idea of a European sovereignty and strategic autonomy. So this is a report made for the Rand report, made for the Rothschilds, the oligarchs, how to destroy Germany and by cutting off Russian gas, how to provoke Russia, how to sanction Russia, and this is all pre-planned. This is January. This is before the invasions, you call it, or the special operation by Russia into Ukraine. Makes sense? The only feasible way to guarantee Germany's rejection of Russian energy supplies is to involve both sides in the military conflict in Germany. And so Germany's rejection of Russian energy supplies is to involve both sides in military conflict, inevitably leading to a military response from Russia. Russians will obviously not be able to leave unanswered the massive Ukrainian army pressure on the unrecognized Donbass republics. That would be made possible to declare Russia as an aggressor and apply it to the entire package of sanctions prepared beforehand. Putin may in turn decide to impose limited counter-sanctions primarily on Russian energy supplies to Europe. Thus, the damage to the EU countries will be quite comparable to the one to the Russians, and in some countries, primarily in Germany, will be higher. The prerequisite for Germany to fall into this trap is the leading role of green parties and ideology in Europe. The German Greens are a strongly dramatic, if not zealous, movement, which makes it quite easy to make them ignore economic arguments. There you have it, folks, right in front of you. This is the Rand report. This is a leaked document from January this year. It is pre-planned. They pre-planned to provoke Russia to come into Eastern Europe, to sanction Russia, so then to stop the gas supplies to Europe, to destroy Europe and destroy Germany in particular. They fund and support the green zealots who is too stupid to know the economic ramifications of their results, and as a result, they're going to destroy Europe, and Germany could go to war with Russia to survive. And once again, you see the history repeating itself. Rothschilds must maintain their control because the fall of the cabal, their financial system is imploding, and that as a result of that, the dollar is going to ultimately crash. They can't keep printing money, and the world is teetering on the one of the greatest economic crashes you or I will ever witness in our lifetime. It's all being manipulated, just like the Great Depression was manipulated, just like the Spanish flu was manipulated by the Rockefellers. But the Rothschilds are wanting to create World War III. Unless you understand the puppet masters, what they're doing, you go, why is Germany, why is Europe cutting off its own gas supplies and destroying its own economy? Because they're controlled by the Rothschilds to commit economic suicide. Why are so many Ukrainian men going off to war to fight a useless war they're going to lose against Russia, where Russia has every right to protect its borders, every right to protect Eastern Ukrainians? They tried appeasement for 8 years to try and settle it where the Donbass regions and Eastern Ukraine stays part of Ukraine but has some autonomy, but under the Minsk agreements. But no. NATO and the West, with the Rothschilds interfering it. And the Rothschilds have made it very clear Russia must not win. Because if Russia wins, the Rothschilds go down, because Ukraine is the most corrupt cesspool of the Khazarian mafia, where their homeland base is. It's where the Khazarian mafia is, which other Rothschilds all started from. If you understand this, it makes sense, folks. We're going to talk more about this in future episodes, but that's all for this episode, folks. But it's there in the detailed leaked documents of the Rand report. We'll make more of those articles available, Australian National Review. But this is all pre-planned. And just like they're pre-planned to destroy Western society through the green movement. So these overzealous green people, loony left, they just fall for any scam. They fall for the COVID scam. Please give me a booster. They're the ones, a teacher's pet, lining up, complying. They think compliance is going to equal success. They're complying to a satanic elite cult of dangerous billionaire and trillionaire psychopaths that are going to destroy this world if they don't wake up. Anyone that supports Joe Biden is a dangerous threat to humanity. Why? Because they're so indoctrinated, they're so conditioned, they're so brainwashed by Rothschild's media. That would be Western media. That's why they don't like people like ourselves. That's why they want to try and jail independent journalists, even in Australia. They don't like what we have to say. Australian National Review would be the most censored news site in Australia. Why? Why was I targeted almost 10 years ago, since I launched Australian National Review as one of the first newspapers in decades to launch in Australia? Why? Because we exposed the Rothschilds, we exposed the criminal corruption in Australian government and the mainstream media and their collusion with that. They detest what we have to say and they would like to shut us up. But thanks to our small donors that support us, they can't. And thanks to the commitment of our team, we will continue to expose the fraud. Oh, it's just a conspiracy theory. I think doesn't buy it anymore. We know the truth, you know the truth, and spread the word. Until next time, we'll see you on the next McIntyre Report. Take care.
A new social media platform, truthbook.social, built by the people, for the people, a force for good. Powered by the Australian National Review, non-for-profit news media company, built by the people, for the people as well. And also, the platform will be known as ANR Social. Censor-free and blockchain protected, it combines the best of YouTube features for uploading videos, Telegram and Facebook. To combat the censoring and banning of those who speak the truth, and those who are seeking the truth, truthbook.social will be everything Facebook isn't. Now is the time in human history where the resistance fights back against global tyranny and the globalists and their Great Reset totalitarian agenda. Truthbook.social and ANRsocial.com support the Great Awakening, or as we call it, the Greater Reset. It is supported by the